You, then we'll get to it.
Okay.
Welcome to Meet the Thriller Author, and today's podcast you'll be meeting author Diane Patterson. Diane is the author of the Drusilla Thorne thrillers, and so she's here today for the very first episode of Meet the Thriller Author. Hi, Diane. How are you?
Hello.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being the first one.
Yeah, this is exciting.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So before we get going here, I have some questions for you, of course. But why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and about your books, and then just a little background info.
Okay. Let's see. I have been writing for a very long time. I not recently, 5 or so years ago, found the first story I ever wrote, which I think I was 3 or 4 years old, and I wrote it for my grandfather. It was about a magic wishing well. So I've been writing genre for a very long time. I wrote fiction, and then in the early 90s, I got interested in screenwriting, went to film school at USC, got a degree in screenwriting, and MFA, master's degree in screenwriting. Spent a couple of years down there. Then my husband, his job led us back up here to the Silicon Valley where we live now. And for a variety of reasons, screenwriting is much better done in the greater LA area. And lots of people have discussed this, but it really is. So I turned back to fiction writing and discovered that it's a whole different set of muscles. It really is. But I also discovered this thing called NaNoWriMo. So I had started a number of novels and not finished them. And with NaNoWriMo, I actually finished one. It was terrible and needed a lot of rewriting. By the way, if you do NaNoWriMo, please be advised that most likely your book is going to be terrible and need a lot of rewriting. But I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and it's a lot more personal than screenwriting because you can dream up any scenario you want. You can have anything happen that you want, and you don't have to worry about budgeting or the constraints of television, et cetera, et cetera. So I started writing, and I got to the point with You Know Who I Am was actually the first book that I wrote. And I finished it early 2008, I think, which is why, hilariously, there's a number of sort of old-fashioned technology things in it that sort of crack me up every time I read them. But when I wrote it, it was the way things were done. And I found an agent very quickly. I sometimes feel bad saying that, and sometimes I don't. But I found an agent very quickly, and she sent it out. And basically, we got a ton of rejections saying, this was great, we can't sell it. Or this was great, we don't know how to market it. Do you have anything else? And I was like, oh, my poor book. And a friend of mine said, have you thought about self-publishing? And I said, no, self-publishing is what people who don't know what they're doing do. I would never do that. Put it in a drawer, forgot about it. A couple years later, pulled it out, said, you know, this book isn't half bad. So I got it edited. I'd done all the editing myself up until that point. Got it edited by an editor who had done a lot of mystery work. Lopped about 20,000 words out of it. It was about 95,000 words. Put it up on Amazon and got a lot of pretty good feedback. A lot of. I then proceeded not to publish anything for another year. We can get into that, but and then I published 2 more last year, and this year I'm getting my book 4 ready, kind of not done yet, but ready to publish. So.
Oh, okay, well, that's great. So then it's also the book that you're working on now is also Drusilla Thorne?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm working on a side project which came out of nowhere, which is a series of, I don't know how to put this exactly, sort of zombie romps set in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Oh, cool.
Which is weird because I don't read post-apocalyptic fiction and I refuse categorically to watch The Walking Dead. But I was having insomnia one night and suddenly this whole idea occurred to me and I'm like, oh, thanks a lot.
Yeah, you can't fight it, right?
Yeah. And they're like shorter novellas. And for some reason, novellas, I have no problem writing novellas. Novellas, it's like I have the whole thing in my head and I can just sit down and write it. Novels, I'm still fighting against myself. Anyhow, we can go into that. But yeah, so at the moment, working on a Drusilla Thorn mystery, and as a back burner thing, I have these zombie novellas.
So what got you into writing thrillers? Is that something that you enjoyed reading before?
Always loved them. I've loved thriller novels. I love thriller movies. One of the jokes I make is around Christmas time. My husband and I both love Alan Rickman movies. Mine is Die Hard. His Love Actually. You give me the choice of a thriller movie or a rom-com at the movie theater. There's like no question which one I'm going to pick. I've read all the Robert Ludlum novels growing up, that kind of thing.
So those are some of your influences then, Robert Ludlum, and like when you started writing, like.
Let's see, Robert Ludlum, Stephen King. Boy, who else did I read? Loved the mystery novels of Lauren Henderson, who's a British author.
Have to check her out.
Yeah, she wrote about 5 of them, the Sam Jones series, and then stopped, possibly because it's a little unusual to have a non-cozy mystery series with a female protagonist, but we can get into that too. One of the great things about self-publishing is that you can have a slightly offbeat main character.
Yeah, I think that's a big bonus for readers too. You get to read things that are a little different from the standard norm.
And there's tons of stuff that's like the standard norm too, but you don't have to wait, unless for me, you don't have to wait 12 months for the next book. There's a lot of material out there. So.
And now, so like, now that you find yourself, you're writing and doing all these other things, do you still find time to read? And are you still reading thrillers?
I haven't been so much. Mostly when I read, I've been reading nonfiction. Mostly as research or things I'm interested in. Something I've noticed is that my reading actually has gone down, and I'm not sure whether it's because of ebooks. Interestingly enough, my husband and I used to have date night every week when the kids were really little, and we half the time would end up at a bookstore and buy like armfuls of books. And since ebooks really came along, we don't do that anymore. I live in the Silicon Valley. It's 10 miles to the nearest bookstore now. It's crazy. Or at least I guess the nearest major bookstore. We have a little one downtown, which has a good selection, but it's primarily the big sellers. So.
Yeah, the bookstores are going out. There isn't a Barnes and Nobles or Borders anymore here in San Francisco. I have to go over the bridge if I want to.
Wow. I mean, I knew Borders had closed because they closed everywhere, but Barnes and Noble too, really?
Yep. Only small independent ones are left. So yeah, no more Barnes and Nobles within here. So now, what exactly inspired you to write your first book then, your current series?
This was actually a character I had come up with for a screenplay that I wrote at USC. And I really enjoyed writing her. And it was funny because a number of the criticisms I received from it is, wow, she isn't nice. Wow, where's the romance? And I'm like, having romance didn't occur to me once in writing, because I don't read a lot of it. I'm not writing it. This, just not to say that I'm anywhere in a category near these people, but this is sort of at the beginning of the great anti-hero push in television, The Sopranos and Walter White and stuff. hero, the extremely tarnished or even criminal main character, who hopefully is interesting, but is not always on the side of right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great too, especially with you don't see that as often either with female protagonists. So that's kind of cool. You have it, she is an anti-hero. You usually don't hear that too much.
It's tough, particularly if you want to do a series, because you need the people to keep coming back. And you could see, actually, there's one, Patricia Highsmith, with her Ripley novels. And of course, Ripley is a man. She did a series of novels where Ripley is the main character, and he's also the bad guy for most of it. But it's an interesting and sometimes extremely difficult task to pull off.
Yeah. Do you think that's probably one of the reasons why, like, the traditional route kind of pushed back because they didn't know, because they weren't used to that?
I know I did think that. I'm really of the mind now that it doesn't matter. If I had one of these $100 million corporations that was trying to serve the greatest number of people, I might concentrate on well-known tropes as well. And I shouldn't say tropes, I mean well-known categories, well-known, because it is quite an investment to come out with a book, a physical book, in hundreds of bookstores for people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm okay with it.
And so now, where do you get your ideas for your books?
Let's see. The one thing I do a lot, since particularly the web makes this so easy, is I read a lot of articles online. Following links here, Twitter is a great source of this, and I read these. If a story is interesting to me, I clip it via Evernote web clipper, and I store it in Evernote. I have probably thousands of articles stored in there, and I tag them. And so if I'm looking for something, for instance, I was categorizing all of my articles once, and I discovered that I had clipped 3 or 4 articles on, there was tremendous housing growth in the Central Valley during the late 90s or something, and then the market collapsed, right? So they had all of these freshly built houses that no one was living in. So I had clipped 3 or 4 articles about how pot growers had moved in and turned all of these abandoned houses into grow houses. And I said, apparently there's something about that story that really, really fascinates me.
So
not that I have written about that yet, but boy, do I really want to fit that into a story somehow. I just love that. That's just like California to me in one crime article,
Yeah, just even it's like a little scene or something that's kind of interesting, like kind of cool, kind of interesting in an abandoned property.
Well, the basis for Everybody Takes the Money, which came out last year, was an article that I read about a guy in Montana, upstanding member of the community, who was using his lending firm basically to get exchange of services from young women.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. Now, I in writing about it, I ended up having to change a great deal, but that was definitely the genesis of the idea. Another one, one of the things that went into The Sound of Footsteps was a story that someone had told me a long time ago about a haunted house that she lived in that turned out to be not so haunted. And just the impact of her telling me that story has always stayed with me. And that was like 20 or 25 years ago. So.
Oh, awesome. 25 years later, you incorporate it into the story, the book.
It's like, and it was difficult because when I would tell people about it, they'd go, "Ooh, ghosts." And I'm like, yeah, it's not actually haunted. How do I explain this to people?
Yeah, without spoiling it.
Yeah. Because I love horror thrillers. I love urban fantasy. I think I mean, I bought Jim Butcher's first book when it was his first book. Um, but I find what humans do to other humans to be much closer to what I want to write about. I don't, except for the zombie thing, which
Mhm.
is kind of turning into a comedy thing. Uh, Mostly I write about what people do to other people.
Yeah, that's usually even more frightening, isn't it?
Yeah.
So now you mentioned that your background in writing screenplays and or working in television.
Yeah.
So do you find that films and television, pop culture, is that play into your storytelling?
Some, I don't think you can get away from it.
Hmm.
Um, there's some things that I'm definitely aware of that I don't want to do because I have seen them so often. And then there's some things that I realize people really want. For instance, in the original uh, conception of this character, back when I was doing the screenplay at USC, she was, her companion was a young woman that she had rescued from a bad situation. And my mentor said, "It's your younger sister. It's what the situation you have is way too complex to explain to an audience. It's her younger sister. That's why she's taking care of her." And I went, "Oh, well, having them be sisters, and actually the whole relationship there is based on something that happened to a friend of mine. Uh, I don't know if I should tell this anecdote, but I noticed that he and his sister had very similar names. For instance, uh, Daniel and Danielle. And I said, "What did your did your family just run out of names?" And he said, "No, it turns out my younger sister was named after my father's mistress."
Oh,
We didn't find that out until much later. I went,
yeah.
"Oh," in case you're wondering what kind of people you meet at Stanford.
Yeah.
Yeah. So little things stay with me and come back.
That was going to be one of my questions, was whether your personal experiences or people you know, the influence make it into your books, and it looks like the answer is yes.
Yes, but for instance, people always say, if someone really makes you angry, you should kill them off in your next book. And I have tried. There's one person that I desperately tried to kill in my book, and I'm like, this is just not interesting enough. I wonder what that says about my anger about this person. Maybe I should just let it go. Uh, you didn't make enough of an impact on me for me to kill you in one of my books. So,
And now, are there any similarities with your characters and you?
just that our names start with D.
Okay.
Uh, in a lot of ways, it's, well, I know in that kind of situation, I would completely swallow my anger and try to maintain civility. She has no problem causing a problem with it. So I guess, from that aspect, there's a little bit of wish fulfillment in there.
Mm.
Um, no, I'm much actually closer to the younger sister, who's very quiet and very reserved.
So now, when you're so you mentioned the clipping articles to Evernote and all the research that's available out there. Do you find that challenging when you're trying to write? I mean, is there like could be like a lot of information overload, or what's your process to get everything going and to start actually writing your novels?
Sometimes, if there's an element of my book, uh, I don't do a lot of the let me explain DNA testing to my audience. That's not a big factor in my storytelling. Uh, what, for instance, if I did have DNA testing as an aspect of my book, I think I would try to mention the various steps. They would need to match. I don't know anything about DNA testing. They would need to match these parts of the DNA or whatever. I probably wouldn't go into the specifics of the machines that they use. And if I needed it to happen in 3 days instead of 2 weeks, I would have zero problem. It's okay if it isn't exact. Uh, I love that aspect of some books where they show a part of a world that you don't know anything about. I never trust that it's exact. When research takes the place of character development or plot development or whatever in a book, I toss it
Yeah.
across the room.
Yeah, what is it? Is that show don't tell, or tell don't show? What is that one? That's saying that they always say.
Show don't tell. And I think that there's absolutely a place and time for telling.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to see them have breakfast every morning. You can just say they had breakfast and then move on.
Yeah.
Expect. My sister loved the James Michener novels.
Oh,
Loved them.
I tried.
I couldn't get into them to save my life. So
Yeah, I tried to read.
Everybody's looking for something different.
Yep, I remember reading Centennial, and it was like hundreds of pages about dinosaurs. I'm like, I thought this was a Western. Took me a while to figure that one out.
Yeah.
So now, so when you're writing, where do you usually write?
I write right here. This is my treadmill desk. I'm standing at the moment.
Oh, cool.
I have my MacBook Pro over here to the side, and it's connected to an old iMac. That's my giant screen. And I'm generally walking at a very slow pace while I write.
So you're actually walking and writing at the same time, huh?
Yeah, I usually cover 5 to 7 miles a day that way.
Wow, that's cool.
And it's not exercise. Like I have an Apple Watch, and it never shows up as actual exercise because you're walking so slowly that it doesn't raise your heart rate. But I can't sit for long periods of time because of my back, and my standing posture is terrible. I'm like always doing stork pose. But walking, nice, easy, gentle walking works great. So
yeah, it's better than sitting all day. I know how that one goes. I've heard a lot of good things about the treadmill desk.
Yeah. So
so I'm sorry, was that?
I love it.
Cool. So now, so can you describe like your? I know it's hard to say a regular or average, but what's kind of like your writing day usually go like?
It's funny. I've gotten much more regular about it this year. Unfortunately, I ran into a problem with my outline for book 4, which if you listen to my other podcast, you would have heard me complaining about. But every day I get up, I get my kids off to school, I have breakfast with my husband, and then at 9 a.m. I'm at my desk. I close messages, I close everything. I find I don't need Mac freedom so much anymore. It's like, no, I'm going to be in charge of it. At 9 a.m., I get back to working on what I'm doing. For instance, the zombie novellas, which were about 30,000 words each, took me 2 or 3 weeks each. Just write from 9 to 12 or 9 to 1, have lunch, and then usually my kids start coming home, so I take care of admin stuff in the afternoon or start driving them around places. So 9 to 1 definitely is just me, just my time. I listen to soundtracks or scores because I don't want any voices. I don't want to be listening to any lyrics. I just listen, or this thing called trailer music, which is the music from like movie trailers, which is designed to invoke an emotional response in 3 or 4 minutes. And it's great. I totally zone out. I listen to this music and I write.
Oh, that is very interesting. You don't get distracted. Like if it's the song that you remember from the radio or something, you'd be like, oh, I remember that song. And I remember when I was whatever, you don't get distracted. That's a good idea.
Yeah. I guess if you could listen to music in a language you don't understand, that might work too. But
yeah,
I found my thing. I'm just going to stick with that for a while.
Yeah, it's working for you, right?
Yeah.
So, so can you describe a little bit about your series, your current series right now? Just a little bit about the characters and if all the 3 books, how they're intertwined together or they're standalones.
Okay, the first book currently is a novella that's free everywhere, and that introduces the character. That was actually written third of the 3 because I wanted to have a little introductory novella, and then the main character. So the main character and her sister moved to San Antonio, Texas, where she is developing her new identity, which is the name that we know her under for the series, Drusilla Thorne. And her sister is Stevie. And Stevie is very quiet and reserved, and we learn over time why she is so withdrawn and unable to deal with the outside world. Drusilla, however, has zero problems with this. She is responsible for her little sister. She is responsible for keeping them off the radar of the people who are looking for them, and she has to take care of everything. Above the law, below the law, she's not too upset about where things end up for her. So yeah.
And she's a private investigator, right?
Well, what happens? So one of the things, I have read a ton of amateur sleuth mystery novels over the years. One of the things that has driven me crazy about some of them is after the second book in the series, there is no reason why this person would keep stumbling across dead bodies.
Yeah,
You know,
like Jessica Fletcher.
Yeah, the most dangerous city in America. If my kid's kindergarten teacher discovers a dead body, this is terrible. The third or fourth time she does it, I want my kid out of that, out of that classroom. So why does she keep getting involved with these people? Because she has this unwillingness to worry so much about the legal limits, the legal lines for doing things. Things that you and I wouldn't even consider doing. She's like, yeah, you want me to break into somebody's apartment? Yeah, sure. Let's go do that. So she ends up in Los Angeles with Stevie, a husband that she married in Las Vegas that happened off screen, is murdered. And that's how she gets sort of involved in a series of murders in Los Angeles. So, and that is one of the tricks that I have to come up with every book. Why does this woman keep finding dead bodies? It's that much. A police detective, they're paid to find dead bodies. Police procedural. Those are really great for looking into the life of a police detective. I'm not that interested in following the day-to-day, particularly because I don't want to get that wrong. I don't want to get the details of what the police do wrong. If someone is working below the legal line, you can make stuff up. You can
a little more leeway, huh?
Yeah. So that's the setup. And for a variety of reasons that I go into in the book, she can't leave Los Angeles. She's sort of trapped in Los Angeles. So it's, Dante's Inferno meets film noir.
Cool. Love that description. So now, with your current work in progress, can you give us a little hint or a little tease as to what's going on?
Drusilla meets the man of her dreams. Unfortunately, she found a dead body in their way first.
Oh, okay. Wow. That's good. Yeah, that might kind of bring a problem or two, huh?
Yeah. Well, there are definitely times where I'm like, gosh, I wish I'd spent more time reading romance novels. How does this work again? So I know. I'm like, I met my husband. We immediately moved in together, and then we got married, and that was many, many years ago. I don't know anything about the difficulty. I'm like, as far as I can tell,
there are no dead bodies.
Yeah. As far as I can tell, romance and marriage are really pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So now, is there anything that you'd want to share to readers who are just discovering your books or are interested in reading thrillers or mysteries?
I hope the ride is as fun for you as it is for me writing it. I love it when the characters surprise me, and I hope they surprise you too.
And do you enjoy interacting with readers when they contact you?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's a lot of fun. talking to them. I realized, I know there's a whole method that people discuss for talking to the community, and I guess I don't follow any of those rules. I'm just like, oh hey,
Yeah.
here's what's going on.
Well, that makes it more fun, I think, especially for the readers.
Yeah.
The whole relationship of author and readers is changing so much anyway. So, so where can they find you? Where do you usually hang out online?
Online, let's see. I am on Facebook. I have a personal page and I have an author page. I prefer to keep all of the book things on the author page.
Mm-hmm.
My books are available in all of the bookstores, except only the free novella is on Google Play for a variety of reasons. But I'm in all of the major bookstores, and I'm on Twitter. I spend an inordinate amount of time on Twitter. That's probably my biggest vice during the day. And I'm @ Diane Patterson on Twitter.
Okay, and then your website's dianepatterson.com, right?
DianePatterson.com.
And what about your Facebook page?
Oh, my personal Facebook page is Diane Patterson. The author page has some weird collection of letters and numbers. I don't know how to set that up as a name.
That's that Facebook weird stuff sometimes.
Yeah,
so Diane Patterson, or go to @Diane Patterson at Twitter, and they'll be able to connect with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time for this interview and for being the first thriller author on Meet the Thriller Author.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Fun. Bye.